They say you don't really own a house. You're just borrowing it for the time your heart is beating, while you fill it with life and love and family. For me, this house was more than bricks and shingles. It was every chapter of my story, all pressed between its sun-faded walls. I moved in with Frank just after our wedding back in 1974, when he drove up with our first mattress tied to the roof of his pickup. The kids used to laugh about the lumpy sofa in the living room, but it was the only place we could afford to curl up together after dinner and listen to his stories from the factory. Frank was never one for big words or grand gestures, but he always fixed what was broken, planted tomatoes every spring, and told the kids, "This house will always be your home." Even after he passed, this house didn't feel empty. I filled it with new routines. Sunday pancakes with the grandchildren, my painting class on Tuesdays, tending the roses Frank once joked were more stubborn than me. Photos of birthdays, graduations, and awkward family portraits lined the hallway. My life was simple but rich. Linda, my oldest, always moved faster than the rest of us. First to bring home a science project that exploded on my kitchen table, first to declare she'd have her own business by 30, first to leave home for college with 3 suitcases and a heart set on New York. She came home less often as the years rolled on, but she never really left. She'd call about her latest idea, her worries about Mason's school, or just to vent about how hard it was to be a working mother and a wife. I'd listen always because that's what mothers do. Tom was my quiet one, the boy with gentle hands who nursed stray kittens back to health and never forgot my birthday, even after he moved 3 towns over. He never complained, never judged. He just showed up, fixed the leaky faucet, and left a pie on my counter. When Frank died, it was Tom who moved in for a few months to help me learn how to balance a checkbook and reset the breaker when the lights flickered. He never asked for anything in return. That spring, Linda showed up earlier than usual. She bustled in with Mason, dropped her bags, and started unloading groceries like it was her house, not mine. She was all smiles, but her eyes flicked over the kitchen like she was searching for something. After dinner, when Mason had fallen asleep on the sofa, she sat across from me, fingers tapping on the table. "Mom, I need to ask you for a huge favor." Her voice was rehearsed, too smooth. I nodded, already feeling that old tug of anxiety in my stomach. "Jack's got this idea," she started. "A bakery right in town. Organic, gluten-free, everything people want these days. We've got most of the money, but the bank, well, they want more security. If you'd co-sign on a mortgage just until the business is running, it would make all the difference." She smiled, but her eyes didn't. They darted to the window, the fridge, my purse on the counter. I was quiet for a long moment. "Linda, this house is all I have. It's where I feel safe, where you and Tom grew up. If I sign it away and things go wrong..." She cut me off, voice rising just a bit. "Nothing's going to go wrong, Mom. Don't you trust me?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. "Of course I trust you, but..." "But what? You'd rather let this house rot than help your own daughter? After everything I've done for this family?" Her words stung. I sat back, hurt. "Linda, it's not about that. I can't risk it. I'm sorry." She stood up, grabbing her purse. "Fine. Forget it. I should have known you'd rather sit here with your memories than actually do something for your family." The door slammed, and the house felt suddenly colder, quieter. I wiped down the kitchen, made a pot of tea, and sat alone at the table, the clock ticking louder than usual. Tom called later that night, his voice warm and calm. I told him about Linda, about the bakery, about her anger. He listened, then said softly, "You did the right thing, Mom. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Linda always thinks if she pushes hard enough, she'll get her way. But doubt not at me. Maybe I was too cautious. Maybe I should have helped." But then I remembered Frank's words. Never gamble with the roof over your head. The next week, Linda didn't call. She didn't answer my texts. When Mason's birthday came, she sent a message through Jack that they were too busy to come over. Tom came instead. We sat on the porch, watched the sun go down, and ate the cake I'd made for Mason, candles and all. "I wish things were different," I said quietly. "Maybe they are, Mom. Maybe this is just who Linda's become." I watched the garden, remembering how Linda used to play with Tom for hours, building forts, picking wildflowers, chasing fireflies. Where did that little girl go? When did my family become so fragile? The days blurred together. I found comfort in small routines, walking to the mailbox, knitting a blanket for the church raffle, talking with neighbors who'd known us for decades. Then one morning a letter arrived. A thick envelope from the bank. My hand shook as I opened it. Notice of mortgage delinquency. My name, my house, a debt I never agreed to. Pages of legal language, numbers I couldn't understand. A signature at the bottom that looked like mine. I sat down hard, my chest tight. I dialed Tom, hands trembling. Mom? What happened? I tried to explain, voice cracking. Tom was there within the hour, reading through the letter, pacing the kitchen. He held the papers up to the window, compared signatures, made notes. This isn't right. Mom, you didn't sign this, did you? I shook my head. Tears started to fall. Tom hugged me tight. We'll get to the bottom of this. I promise. That night I barely slept. I replayed every moment, every conversation, trying to figure out how we'd ended up here. Was it something I did? Was it my fault for not saying yes, for not trusting my own daughter? Tom made calls to the bank, to a lawyer, to the police. The next day, an officer came to the house. He was polite but serious, asking questions I never thought I'd hear in my own living room. Do you know anyone who might have access to your documents? Anyone who'd benefit from forging your signature? I looked at the family photos on the wall, at Linda's face smiling back at me from kindergarten, high school, her wedding day. My throat closed. I'm not sure, I whispered. Tom answered for me. She wouldn't do this herself. Someone did this to her. The officer nodded, taking notes. We'll investigate. If anything comes to mind, call us. After he left, Tom squeezed my shoulder. We'll figure this out, Mom. You're not alone. But that night, as I sat at the kitchen table, the house felt different, like I didn't belong, like I was a guest in my own story. After the officer's visit, the world seemed smaller. My house, once a haven, now felt exposed, like every squeak of the floorboards. Every ring at the doorbell could be someone coming to take away the life I'd built. Tom insisted on staying for a few days. He fixed the creaky gate, brewed extra strong coffee every morning, and handled calls from the bank when I couldn't find the words. He kept telling me, we'll get through this, Mom. Promise. His presence was a balm, but it couldn't fill the space Linda's silence left behind. Every night I'd lie awake, staring at the glow of the street lamp through the curtains, replaying all the what-ifs. What if I'd said yes? What if I'd trusted Linda just one more time? What if I was wrong about everything? One afternoon, as I watered my roses, Linda appeared on the sidewalk. She looked thinner, pale, her hair pulled back too tight. Hi, Mom, she said. Her voice was brittle, almost careful. My heart leaped, torn between joy and fear. Linda, I've been worried sick. Why haven't you called me back? She glanced around, as if the neighbors might be listening. I've been busy. With the bakery. With Mason. Things are hard right now. I nodded, biting back questions. You can always talk to me. You know that. Linda looked away. Are you okay? I heard about some trouble with the bank. A chill ran through me. Yes, I got a letter. Tom's helping me sort it out. She shifted from foot to foot. Did you tell them about me? My breath caught. Why would I, Linda? Did you have anything to do with this? She bristled. Of course not. How could you even think? She stopped herself, jaw set. If you trust Tom so much, why don't you just ask him to pay your bills? Maybe he'll move in and take care of you for good. Her words cut deep. Linda, what's gotten into you? But she just turned and walked away, Mason trailing after her, his backpack bouncing. I watched them go, heart heavy. My daughter was slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know how to reach her. That evening, Tom found me on the porch, lost in thought. She'll come around, he said softly. She always does. But I wasn't sure. Not this time. The bank kept calling. Their voices became more urgent. Missed payments, legal action, threats of foreclosure. Each letter and phone call chipped away at my resolve, until I started to dread the sound of the mailbox creaking open or the phone ringing. One day, a woman from the bank came by. She was young, with a clipboard and a forced smile. Mrs. Miller, we need to verify some information regarding your mortgage. She ran through a list of questions, date of birth, address, details about my income. I answered as best I could, feeling smaller with every word. Then she showed me the loan documents. My signature, shaky but familiar, was there on the bottom line. "Is this your signature?" she asked. I stared at it, heart pounding. It looked like mine almost, but I knew. I knew the loop in the M was too wide, the tail of the R too short. "No," I whispered. "That's not mine." The woman frowned, making notes. "We'll be in touch, Mrs. Miller." After she left, I called Tom. He was furious. "Mom, we need to get a lawyer. This isn't just a mistake anymore. Someone's forging your name." We met with a local attorney, Mr. Wallace, in his stuffy office lined with old law books and fading diplomas. He listened, asked questions, examined the documents under a magnifying glass. "This is a serious offense," he said finally. "Identity theft, forgery, fraud. Do you have any idea who might be responsible?" I hesitated, tears welling in my eyes. I don't want to believe it, but I can't think of anyone else who'd have reason." Tom put a hand on my shoulder. "Mom, we have to be honest. If it's Linda, the truth will come out. It's the only way to protect you and your home." Mr. Wallace nodded. "We'll involve the police, the bank's fraud department, and file for an injunction on the property. In the meantime, don't sign anything, don't answer any calls from numbers you don't recognize. Let me handle it." The next days blurred into one long knot of anxiety: visits to the police station, phone calls with the bank, meetings with Mr. Wallace. I had to relive every painful detail, answer questions I never thought I'd hear. "Did you give anyone permission to use your documents? Had you ever lost your ID? Did anyone in your family stand to benefit?" The shame was almost worse than the fear. Neighbors started whispering. The mailman gave me sympathetic looks. Even the cashier at the grocery store seemed to know something was wrong. Linda didn't call. Jack sent a single angry message: "You're ruining our lives. Hope you're happy." I cried that night, big, racking sobs into my pillow. Tom found me in the morning, sat on the edge of the bed, and just held my hand until I could breathe again. "We'll get through this," he said again. "No matter what happens." The weeks dragged on. There were interviews with detectives, fingerprint dusting on my mailbox, visits from insurance agents. I'd never felt so helpless, so violated. And still my house, my beautiful stubborn house, stood around me. The roses bloomed, the floors creaked, the kitchen filled with afternoon light, as if reminding me of better days. One evening, after a long day of legal meetings, Tom and I sat in the living room, looking at old family photos. Mason's baby picture, Linda in her high school cap and gown, Tom holding a stray kitten in the backyard. "How did we get here?" I whispered. "Where did I go wrong?" Tom shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. People change. Life changes them." He looked me in the eye. "What matters is that you're standing up for yourself now. You're not letting anyone, no matter who, take what you've built." I tried to believe him. I tried to remember the strong woman I'd always been. The mother who stayed up with fevers, who built forts out of blankets, who survived Frank's death and still got up every morning to greet the day. But in the quiet, doubt crept in. Maybe I should have given Linda what she wanted. Maybe this was all my fault. That night, I stood at the window and watched the streetlights flicker on. Somewhere in the dark, a new resolve started to grow. A small flame, barely there but warm against the cold. The day the truth came out, I felt as if a cold wind had blown right through the heart of my house. It started with a phone call from Mr. Wallace, our attorney. His voice was tense, almost apologetic. "Mrs. Miller, I just heard from the police. They've confirmed the handwriting analysis. The signature on the mortgage documents was forged, and well, they're requesting to speak to your daughter, Linda." My knees buckled. I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter until my fingers turned white. Tom was at work, so I faced the silence alone. All those years I spent patching up skinned knees and hurt feelings, all the bedtime stories, the birthday cakes, the scraped-together tuition money. It all led to this. A police investigation with my daughter's name on the file. The detectives came again, this time with sharper questions, a new edge in their voices. "Mrs. Miller, did anyone in your family express financial trouble lately? Did anyone have access to your paperwork? Bank statements, deeds, identification?" I told them everything I could remember. Linda's visit, her request, my refusal. How I'd found the bank letter, how she'd grown cold and distant since. They nodded, taking notes. "We'll need to speak to her directly. She may be facing charges for fraud, forgery, and identity theft. After they left, I called Tom. My voice shook as I told him what happened. It's true, Tom. She did it. She really did. He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke with a steadiness I envied. Mom, we're going to get through this. You're not alone. But I felt alone, terribly, utterly alone. The next days blurred into a haze of fear and shame. The police found Linda at her apartment. She refused to talk at first. Then, under questioning, she admitted forging my signature, insisting she was desperate, that she only meant to borrow the money until the bakery succeeded. Jack, her husband, called me that evening, his voice raw with rage. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? You're destroying your own family. You could have just signed. Why did you have to make this a legal matter? I listened silent to his tirade. When he hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, watching the shadows creep across the linoleum. Neighbors started to look at me differently. Some avoided my eyes at the grocery store. Others whispered behind their hands, as if my shame was contagious. I heard one woman mutter, "I'd never call the police on my own child." Those words echoed in my mind for days. Was I a traitor to my own blood? Was I sacrificing my daughter's future for my own safety? Tom stayed with me as often as he could, filling the house with warmth and care. He fixed the loose banister, took out the trash, brewed my favorite tea. He never pushed, never judged. He only said, "You're stronger than you think, Mom. You did what you had to do." But nights were hardest. I lay in bed, heart pounding, replaying the past like an old home movie. Linda as a little girl, losing her first tooth. Linda in her prom dress, twirling in the hallway. The daughter I loved, the woman she'd become. Were they the same person? Or had I missed the moment she changed? The court dates came faster than I was ready for. Paperwork, legal fees, meetings with the DA. Linda's lawyer called, asking if I'd consider settling this quietly. He begged me to drop the charges, to think of Mason, to think of Linda's future. I almost gave in, but then Tom showed me the bank statements. If I'd ignored the forged loan, I would have lost everything. The house, my savings, my independence, the very roof over my head. Still, the guilt gnawed at me. Every news article about elder fraud, every neighbor's glance, every sleepless night, reminded me I was now the mother who took her own child to court. Linda refused to speak to me. Mason's birthday passed without a call. The ache was physical. A hollow space where my daughter's voice used to be. One evening, after a particularly grueling meeting with the DA, I found myself standing in front of the old hall mirror. I looked older, smaller, thinner than I remembered. But behind the fear I saw something else, a flicker of resolve. I had survived Frank's death. I had raised 2 children, worked 2 jobs, paid off this house penny by penny. I would not let my story end with shame. Tom hugged me before bed, whispering, "Whatever happens, Mom, I'm proud of you. Dad would be proud too." His words lit a small flame in my chest, a reminder that family isn't just about blood. It's about the choices we make, the lines we draw, the courage to stand up for ourselves when the world expects us to shrink. As the court date approached, I grew quieter but not weaker. I gathered every document, every letter, every scrap of evidence. I sat with Mr. Wallace, rehearsing what I would say if asked about Linda. "She's my daughter," I said quietly, "but she's also responsible for her choices. I can't ignore what she's done, no matter how much it hurts." He nodded, solemn. "You're doing the right thing. You're protecting yourself, and setting a boundary she should have respected." Still, each day felt like an uphill climb. The mailbox filled with legal letters, reminders of court dates, notices from the bank. At night, the house felt too big, too empty, the quiet a constant ache. But I held on. I planted my roses, baked lemon bars for Tom, called my sister every Sunday. I found comfort in routine, in the small stubborn joys that Linda couldn't steal from me. On the eve of the trial, I wrote a letter to Linda, not to be sent but to be written. I poured out every memory, every wish, every apology for whatever part I'd played in her pain. I told her I loved her, that I always would, but that love didn't mean erasing the truth. When I finished, I folded the letter and tucked it into my dresser drawer. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my best blouse and skirt, pinned Frank's old medal to my jacket, and walked into the courthouse with Tom by my side. No matter what happened, I would face it with my head held high. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not just from the marble floors or the high ceilings that made every whisper echo, but from the way people looked at me as I entered. Some with curiosity, some with quiet judgment, and a few strangers mostly with a hint of pity. Tom walked beside me, steady as always. His suit was a little wrinkled, his hair slightly mussed, but he squeezed my arm every time I started to falter. "We're doing the right thing, Mom," he whispered, as if trying to convince both of us. The bailiff called our case. State of Illinois versus Linda Miller. Linda was already seated at the defendant's table, head bowed, fingers twisting a tissue. She looked small, younger somehow, as if she'd shrunk into the little girl who used to curl up beside me during thunderstorms. Our lawyer, Mr. Wallace, stood tall and calm. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and a tired smile, looked down from her bench. "Let's proceed." Testimony began. First the detective, professional and personal, describing the timeline. The bank's complaint, the handwriting analysis, the phone records. I heard Linda's name repeated over and over, as if spoken by someone who didn't know her at all. Then it was my turn. I took the stand, hands shaking. The court reporter looked at me kindly, and I found my voice somewhere deep in my chest. I told my story. The house Frank and I built, the way I'd guarded every penny, the day Linda came asking for help and my refusal. I described the shock of that first bank letter, the sleepless nights, the shame of having police at my door. "Did you ever give your daughter permission to use your name on those documents?" the prosecutor asked. "No, never." "Did you ever give her your identification or access to your bank records?" "No." I glanced at Linda. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with tears. She wouldn't meet my gaze. After my testimony, the defense attorney, her lawyer, stood. "Mrs. Miller, you say you love your daughter. Is that right?" My throat tightened. "Of course I do. So why bring her to court? Why not forgive her? Isn't family more important than any house or bank account?" For a moment the world seemed to stop. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room turn to me, waiting for my answer. I swallowed hard. Family is everything to me. But so is truth. So is safety. If we let love cover every wound, sometimes we end up bleeding alone. He frowned, taken aback. "But she's your child." "She is. And she made a choice. So did I." The judge nodded, writing notes. Testimony continued. A bank officer, a handwriting expert, even the neighbor who saw Linda come by with a stack of papers that afternoon. Each piece built the case brick by brick. Tom testified too. He spoke with quiet authority, about my integrity, about the fear in my voice that night, about the way I'd given everything to both my children for decades. "She's the strongest woman I know," he said, his eyes shining. "And she deserves to keep the home she built." As the trial went on, my world shrank to that one small courtroom. I watched Linda all day, how she fidgeted with her ring, how she wiped away tears when she thought no one saw, how she never looked my way except once, when our eyes met for just a second. There was pain there and regret and something else, resentment maybe, or shame. At night I sat alone in my tiny motel room, replaying the day's questions, the judge's frown, the jury's silence. Tom brought me takeout, stories about Mason, small distractions, but the loneliness was a weight that pressed on my chest. Outside the courthouse, the world carried on. Cars passing, people laughing at a cafe down the block, children chasing pigeons on the courthouse lawn. Once, as I sat on a bench after a long day, a stranger sat down beside me, a woman my age, soft-spoken, with hands rough from work. She looked at me and said, "I know you. I saw the news. Don't let anyone tell you you're wrong." Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say enough to your own blood. I nearly cried then, from the relief of being seen. In court, Linda's lawyer tried again and again to shift blame: stress, business failure, temporary lapse in judgment. But the facts remained. My signature was forged, my trust betrayed. As the trial wore on, the prosecution made their case. The financial records, the calls between Linda and the bank, her sudden silence after the loan was approved. One afternoon, after particularly harsh cross-examination, Linda broke down in the hallway. I heard her sobbing behind a pillar. I wanted to go to her, to hold her like I did when she fell off her bike as a child. But Tom gently stopped me. She needs to face this, Mom. It's not your job to rescue her from her choices. His words stung, but I knew he was right. The jury deliberated for hours, then days. Meanwhile, life outside blurred by in streaks of sunlight and shadow. I clung to small comforts. A cup of tea, a phone call with my sister, Tom's steady presence beside me. The last morning of the trial, Linda's lawyer approached me quietly in the hallway. "She's terrified," he whispered. "She regrets everything. Please, if there's anything in your heart, anything you can say to help, now's the time." I stared at him, searching for an answer that would ease his pain and mine. But all I could say was, "She's my daughter. I love her." But love and forgiveness are not always the same thing. That afternoon, the judge called us all back into the courtroom. "I have considered the facts and the pain in this room. Mrs. Miller, the law is clear. Your daughter faces sentencing, but I want to know, do you wish to ask for leniency? Or do you want the court to impose the full penalty?" The courtroom held its breath. Linda's lawyer looked at me, pleading. Tom's hand found mine under the table. I looked at my daughter, my child, my betrayer, my blood, and the world seemed to freeze. The judge waited for my answer. The courtroom is silent. I sit, hands folded tight, feeling every year I have lived pressed into my bones. The judge's eyes rest gently on me, not with judgment, but with the weight of impossible expectation. Linda sits across from me, my daughter, her face streaked with tears, her shoulders slumped, looking younger than she has in decades. Tom sits beside me, steady and silent, his hand warm in mine. All at once, memories wash over me. Linda as a child, her hair in braids, climbing into my lap after a nightmare. Linda in her cap and gown, proud and shining. Linda at my kitchen table, pleading for trust. The last hug we shared, how long ago was that? I want to forgive. I want to save her from pain. But I also want to protect myself, to honor the life I have built, the trust one gave, the boundaries I defended at last. I search my heart for a sign, a voice, an answer. There is only silence. The judge's voice breaks through. "Mrs. Miller, you have heard the evidence, you know the law. As the victim, the court gives you the right to recommend. Do you choose mercy for your daughter? Or do you ask for the full penalty of the law?" Everyone in the room turns to me. For the first time in my life, I have no answer ready. What would you do if you were in my place?